Nice. Okay. Hi, I'm Neve. I'm going to be talking about why I'm a Buddhist. So I'll start at the beginning, not at my birth, because that's a bit too long to talk about in 15 minutes. But yeah, as a child, I was really, really aware. I was very, very emotionally broad very early on. At about 6, my grandpa passed away, and it just really, I think it really affected me. I just felt this sense of melancholy, and I remember just having a lot of depth, a lot of sensitivity, but I'll leave that, just remember that for later on. So I'll skip a little bit in the future to something happened actually when I was 14, which snowballed my life pretty much out of control. My mum got cancer when I was 14, and it happened to be the same cancer that her mum had passed away from. It was breast cancer. And for a bit of context, I'm very close to my parents. My mum is probably the person I love the most. I can't really imagine how it is bringing a child into this world who is growing up, to do this talk, I suppose, about her. But this had a really, really tough consequences for my mental health. Actually didn't really, for someone so emotionally aware, I really didn't process it until a couple of weeks I just broke down in class. I was so affected by it, understandably. And as I was writing this talk, I mean, obviously this happened quite a while ago, not that I'm that old, but it happened when I was 14. So I dug out a little poem that basically I wrote back then about how I was feeling. For context as well, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety disorder. And yeah, it was a really tough time, but it's sort of hard to get in that place where I can remember it. So I'll read you the poem that can explain it better than I. I was pulling at the weeds one day. Green really isn't my colour. I want to end up feeling like the petals of my mind aren't in disarray. I'm surprised by the manual. It says my garden blooms today, but I'm stuck picking weeds like candy, but they lay dead among the petals. When I allow my body to cry and say all the things like help me or let my thoughts die, that bitter lemon tea, I want to end up feeling like it's not the end of me. I sweep the tea leaves out with stiff palm and sniggering eyes. I want to feel some sort of happy, even if happy doesn't want me. The nettles bite at my cheeks, but one day it will make me more than numb. I want to end up feeling, even if feeling is hurting me. Denied of tears, numb to poke, cracked and plastered, the sorry remains of another day. Please bring me sweetness or feelings, I'll be happy either way. So yeah, that was a poem I wrote at the time, obviously edited a little bit. A lot. Rewritten? No, it wasn't rewritten. So yeah, this culminated in a rather sad story where, my depression, my anxiety got really out of hand, and it came to a point where I didn't really want to be here anymore. I just saw my experience as one of pain. And one day I was walking to school in my little kilt, and I was overwhelmed by the feelings and the thoughts that came up, and I just stood over this train track, and the thoughts were really scary that came into my head. But something quite mystic happened, and I had been reading a lot of different traditions at this time, like Taoism, Hinduism, Buddhism, but nothing really had such an impact. And but I remembered this mantra that I'd learned. It wasn't a Buddhist mantra. That would be really good for the story. It was a Hindu mantra, actually. This mantra, something in my experience changed, actually, and I became not happy, but I walked along to school, and the moment passed, and it was quite a poignant moment. I just sung the mantra to myself, basically, out loud, it let me carry on another day, I suppose. Part of the reason I love mantra so much. But I continued on my journey. I was really really curious to find out like what it was all about, all of this stuff, all of this life stuff. I couldn't quite comprehend that my mum was going from me, and it seemed like at that time my thought process was along the lines of, right, the more I love someone, the more it's going to hurt. And yeah, it just built this curiosity. So I started to read more. I started to read a bit more of Buddhism. So I was about age 15, and I did a little speech in my class, and I've been reading The Art of Happiness, great book, and yeah, I did my talk on happiness, which for a depressed teenager is quite ironic, and yeah, my teacher asked me at the end of this talk, so I did my little speech, much like this one, but with like, you know, less people and 14-year-olds, so it wasn't too much pressure. And I was reading the book. The book basically says happiness is a perspective, and I thought, well, okay, if it's a perspective, then I'm not just with, you know, bad conditions here, with my mum ill, I can actually do something to change it. And she said at the end of the talk, well, are you happy, Neve? And I thought about it for a bit, and I was like, no, but I think with this Buddhism thing, I might be. And it was quite funny, but it was quite poignant at the time, actually, because I really felt like the response, like looking back, was really interesting, and how bad the mental state is, but how much hope it gave me of like, right, it really is a perspective. That really rung true. So fast forward, it gets a bit better from this point. My mum recovered, which is amazing. And fast forward, I'm an art student, I'm a fashion student. I've shaved off all my hair. I've got like skulls and spider print, not tattooed, painted into the back of my head. I'm living in this warehouse in East London. And there is really nice warehouses. This one was not a nice warehouse. I shared with a lot of different people from a lot of walks of life. And yeah, it was a really interesting time. Basically, it was basically like the pleasure palace, I suppose. Like there was loads of drugs everywhere, loads of sex. It was like pleasure everywhere. But it was... yeah, my mental health, again, was like, I was really anxious. I was always on edge. But I remembered this funny story the other day of basically, I had this really cool roommate. And at the time, I just thought, yeah, she's so cool. Like, she was like she was really in the fashion industry. So I was like, yeah, she's so cool. Like, she had tattoos. She was really, you know... and as I said, there was loads of drugs around in the warehouse, unfortunately. So one day I just made this really nice spaghetti, and she was like, oh, I'm going to this party, do you want to come? And I was like, no, but I really wanted to be friends with her, so she was like, I bet you what, you can have a bit of these drugs to go with your spaghetti. Drugs and spaghetti is not a good idea. Yeah, in my head I was like, what's better than spaghetti? Spaghetti and drugs. Yeah. But it wasn't. It was quite funny actually, because I took the drugs, and at this point I'd been experimenting a little bit, but it was like a really big dose, and I had my spaghetti on my lap in the room, and I completely blacked out, and I woke up with my head in the spaghetti. But yeah, long story short, that wasn't very fulfilling. And yeah, I got pretty disillusioned that this like cool exterior was not really what I wanted. I was really pushing down my sensitivity, I think. I was pushing down my emotional experience and my depth for something light and cool and aesthetic. So yeah, a little bit later, I wanted to move out of the warehouse. I did, thankfully, and yeah, I never saw that person again. And yeah, I just began looking up online. Yeah, where's Buddhism in London? There's got to be something. I mean, London has everything. And there was the LBC, so I went along. at the time, obviously, like I'd found Buddhism through books, so I was practicing quite a while before, but I didn't really have spiritual friendship. It was like, no, Buddhism's my thing, like, you know, all of you like don't know about it. So at the LBC was like, wow, okay, yeah, these people are really, you know their stuff, and they're really in the mood for spiritual friendship. So yeah, my dad came to my mitra ceremony, which is where you become like a friend of Triratna, and I was like, Dad, what did you think of it? And he was like, it's very religious, isn't it? But it's nice. And I was like, well, yeah, you could say that. So they were very supportive, even though I don't think they kind of understand the fullness of everything. And I think what really moves them, obviously I've said that I'm really close to them, I think what I could guess really moves them is when I come back from places like this, they can see that the fullness of my emotional breadth has been held. I've really allowed my sensitivity to come out. I've really allowed myself to express myself. And I think in terms of Buddhism, what I realised very young, or what I could say I realised from my mum being sick and how strong that experience was for me, was that, it's impermanent. There will be suffering. And I think it had to be that strong to catapult me into the Dharma as strongly as I feel it now. And I suppose why I'm a Buddhist, to sum it up, is I really want the truth. I want the truth of experience. I want the truth of how things are. I'm not really interested in authenticity. And I feel like the Dharma really acknowledges that. It really acknowledged my experience, and of all of these different traditions which I studied, I really felt like, wow, okay, well, if my mum doesn't pass away now, well, she surely will in the future, and I'm sure that will break my heart, but I have a path to practice that, and that's what inspires me to this day, as well as the spiritual friendship that the Sangha has given me, to keep living, and I'm much happier now, so don't worry about me now. But